Today we're talking about Charade, and it's from 1963. And the reason I chose this again was because I made a short film in university called Charade, and I got to compare which one is better. I gave it a 3.5 star, so it was fun. My initial, spoiler-free review of it is, it's a fun romp. I think the poster makes it think it's more clever than it is. It's very witty. Audrey Hepburn is very witty in this. And then, Cary Grant is very fun as well. He's very charismatic. And it's very talky. The reason I say that is because while I was watching it, my brother came in and he watched most of the movie with me. Probably about, the last 75% of the movie he watched with me. While he was watching, he was like, oh, this plot is so complicated. It's so weird. They just keep on talking about this stuff. I was trying to say to him that back in the 60s, film is always and will always be a ever-changing, evolving art form, as is every art, really. And so back then, it was very talky, If you're adapting a lot of things from what was written on the page and you're putting it into a movie, you're using that text as the outline for storytelling. And so they're going to have to talk a lot of the story. They're using their voices, their words to explain a lot of the movie. But I think this movie did it pretty well because a lot of the times when they were bantering about everything and they were just talking about who did this? Who killed this guy? Blah, blah, blah. Who's responsible? It gets so convoluted to the point where it's silly and funny. I really dug that. I really did dig that. A few things about this movie. So it was released in 1963. It was directed by Stanley Donen, who also directed a classic, Singin' in the Rain, which a lot of people do know, from 52, so 11 years earlier than Charade. And I really do love Singin' in the Rain. I've only seen it once, so I feel like I've seen it in I want to say 2016, 17. So it was a while ago. So I don't remember it 100%, but hey, I gave it a 4.5 star. That's got to go for something. It does have Debbie Reynolds, Carrie Fisher's mother. Classic. And some of his other films, Funny Face, On the Town, I've heard of those two. All these other ones, don't really know too much about. But Singin' in the Rain, he directed also with Gene Kelly. So he's just in with Gene Kelly. I think some of his other movies he also directed with Gene Kelly. So he kind of had that partnership. Singin' in the Rain, absolute classic. Really love it. The music was great. One of the iconic early musicals. So back to Charade. So Charade, it was the first Audrey Hepburn movie that I've seen. I have not seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, like I said, and I honestly couldn't really name many other Audrey Hepburn movies. I feel like she's very iconic, but her filmography isn't as iconic as her actual persona, if that makes sense. She's more of an icon, a star herself, apart from her movies. Maybe Breakfast at Tiffany's, because that one is just, referenced quite a lot. And so, also with Charade, it was nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars. That was the only Oscar that it was nominated. So, back in 63, nominated for Best Original Song. And honestly, it probably was a song in the credits. I don't remember it that well. So, it was nominated. Didn't win. She was... From this movie, I got a sense of kind of just how she was. I assume that she got this status of being an iconic actress because of just, her wittiness, her charm. And this movie is a prime example of, this movie is full of one-liners from her and Cary Grant. It was you have this whole plot of her husband dying. And then, so kind of just the synopsis. It's not really huge spoilers because it's kind of just the setup of the movie. The synopsis is her husband that she was going to divorce on anyway died while she was on vacation. She comes back and a bunch of people are trying to hunt her down because her husband had a bunch of money and they now think that she has it. And so Cary Grant is kind of the one on her side. But again, that's always questioned in the movie as well. It's who can you trust kind of movie. And just so many, the quippy dialogue between those two trying to navigate the situation and figure out if they should trust each other was the reason the movie was as good as it was. I had here pulled up some of the quotes. I feel like I should just make a quote tier list of just Audrey Hepburn quotes from this movie because there's great ones. They have this great bit in the movie where Cary Grant, he switches his alter ego 4 times And so at one point he's Adam, at one point he's a different guy. So they have this bit, whereas, is there a Mrs. Crookshank? Yes, but you're divorced. No. Oh. My mother. She lives in Detroit. That was a good one. I mean, I feel like me just saying these off the dome, it's like you're not really going to get the context, because it very much is in the context of the movie. Because at this point in the movie, he'd done that a few times, and he'd been like, oh, is there a Mr. Smith? Or a Mrs. Smith? And he says, yes. It's like, oh, really? That's too bad. Oh, but we're divorced. Because they have this on and off fling and everything. You're blocking my view. Which do you prefer? The one you're blocking. It was just the mountains. That one's okay. Do we know each other? Why? Do you think we're going to? I don't know. How would I know? Because I already know an awful lot of people, and until one of them dies, I couldn't possibly meet anybody else. I feel like you can just hear the way that Audrey Hepburn delivers that line. Audrey Hepburn is Reggie Lampert. Of course, you won't be able to lie on your back for a while, but then you can lie from any position, can't you? Some old movies, people get the vibe of, and like the way they talk is different, but I feel like a lot of the sayings, a lot of the quips that she has in this movie feel quite modern. Like the way they like roast each other. Like there was one scene in the trailer where it was like he wanted to take a shower and he's like going in his own room to take a shower. And they're just like, oh, why don't you take a shower in here so we're more safe, so, we're closer together. Trying to get him to, take a shower in her place. And then he ends up getting convinced. She tricks him by screaming and pretending she's in trouble. And then he goes in the shower in just his suit anyway and gets it all wet and everything. I don't know. That was a great scene. It's, those little moments, even though the romance was forced, the romance in this movie is quite forced because, after, 2 days of knowing each other, she's like, oh, I think I love you, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't live without you. Oh, let's get married. It's like, that type of stuff is just like, okay, a bit of an eye roll. A bit of that happens in stories, but never in real life. Still, I think if you can overlook that, it does work well. Yeah, some exchanges are out of time. It definitely, when people watched it in that era, they probably weren't thinking of that as much. Because I guess, even along with just movies have grown and the dialogue that are in movies, just overall culture has grown and relationships, the way people see relationships are different and everything. And so, that does play a factor. But I think that the romance that they have being forced is, you can overlook it because it led to these great moments of their chemistry, because they are really, really good together in this movie. They're great together in this movie. And a few of the other side characters are pretty fun. Again, it's kind of a silly movie. It feels a bit older James Bondy, but less big stakes. Because the stakes aren't as big as the world ending or anything like a lot of the James Bond is. It's more localized, personal James Bond kind of silly plot feel. Because if you've seen the old ones like Dr. No, GoldenEye. GoldenEye's not that old, but it still has more silly side compared to the Daniel Craig ones. And then, Moonraker. Moonraker is super silly. Jaws, the character Jaws. I compare him in this movie. There's a character, what's his face? Herman Scobie. And he has a metal arm. And so Jaws had metal teeth. This guy has a metal arm, and that's kind of his character quirk. He's the big tough guy with a metal arm who's just a bit bumbling idiot and everything. And so, it kind of leads to that a bit. I'm going to go into a bit of spoilers. I know this isn't a movie that everyone's going to go out and rush to see, but if you do care about spoilers, that's okay. You can tune out for a second. But I feel I'm just going to talk about it, and if you want to say, hey, that's cool. So you have that guy with the metal hand, and so there's 3 guys mainly coming after her, trying to find this money, and they're kind of working together. The guy with the metal hand, Herman. Then you have Tex, and he's the gritty, tough bad guy who's very tall, he talks very deeply, and he's just he's the guy who you meet in an alley who's gonna beat you up. Oh yeah, what you're saying is 100% true. Actors give way more. It's their job to give way more than just the lines that they're saying. That, of course. And I think 100% they do it incredibly, incredibly well in this movie. And that's one of the reasons why it is kind of a classic. It has a Criterion release. Right, so there's those 3 bad guys. You have, the gritty guy, Tex. You have the metal hand guy, Herman. And then you have one of the older guys who's supposed to be more thoughtful and everything. Leopold, Gideon. And so they I think a lot of the things with this movie that gives it more of a lighthearted vibe is like, yeah, it is this serious situation that she's like, oh, these people are trying to kill me. She keeps talking to this like CIA guy who actually isn't CIA. Plot twist. He's like, these people are trying to kill me. And they're like all renting out in the same hotel. And initially she's trying to run away from them. And then they kind of just end up hanging out in the same hotel. And they're like, oh, we better find this money. And they kind of like work together to find this money. But then one by one, each of the bad guys keep getting picked off and we don't know who's killing them. And then it's revealed that they all were veterans with her husband. And they found a bunch of money. I forget what country they were in. They found a bunch of money. And then they buried it, said they were going to go back and get it after the war. But her husband did that first and didn't tell all of them. And so they were all mad at her. Or they were all mad at him, which led to them killing him and then being mad at her. There's so much of, oh, did you kill them? Who killed them? And then the whole thing with Cary Grant's character changing his name the entire movies. First he was Peter Joshua, then he was Adam something, then he was, what was it? He was Adam something, he was Peter Joshua, Adam Canfield. He was like two other names in it as well. And so initially we just think he's like a good guy trying to help her. And then there's this theory that he's one of the guys who was in the war as well, his brother. And so he wanted the money, but then it's like, oh, maybe he's not dead. Maybe it's actually him. And then it's revealed in the end he's kind of just like a thief who kind of just does it for the thrill of it. The plot twists were too heavy that it's messing with my brain right now. I feel like the way I'm saying this is getting very complicated, and unless you've seen the movie, it is a bit hard to explain. But I'll do my best because you have her being attacked by all these guys, and it starts with her running away from everybody, running through like subway terminals, calling the CIA guy, being like, help, you got to send help, blah, 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 I'm in this tunnel. And then she ends up, okay, we're going to lock ourselves in this hotel room and not tell anybody, and then hopefully they go away. But then they end up being in the hotel room right across from them, and they all kind of just are hanging out there, be like, okay, let's look around for the money together. And then there's this show off between one of the bad guys and Cary Grant's character on the roof, which was pretty cool, I'll say. I guess it was kind of, it was like, they kind of all felt a bit working together at some point, which did feel a bit weird. But the point is, the confusion that I'm probably giving out, if you haven't seen this movie, about this whole plot was kind of made what made it fun. Because when it all came together, I think it all came together in a very neat way. Because it did make sense in the end. It really did. In the end, you have Cary Grant's character showing off against the fake CIA agent, and his, played by Walter Matthau, Bartholomew. Yes, his name's Bartholomew in the movie. And they're facing off, and it ends up that, the way that he stashed the money, he bought these really expensive stamps and put them on an envelope. And so she has the stamps in an envelope, and these two guys are on two sides of pillars, and they have guns pointed at her. Be like, okay, come give the envelope to me, or else I'm going to kill you. And then the other guy's like, but if you kill her, then the envelopes are going to be there, and you're going to walk out, and I'm going to shoot you. And just like the way they were explaining the final scene and the banter of them trying to figure everything out was pretty fun. I think that it is one of those movies that I feel like a lot of people maybe saw when they were younger. And I feel like it could be nostalgic for a lot of people. And I think it's one of those movies you can pop it in, and it's just, it's kind of like I was saying with Bullet Train earlier, where it's kind of just like a good ride. It's not taking itself seriously, which is good. It has some fun visuals, some fun characters. Yeah, I know it's not one that a lot of people are going to rush out to see. It's not like a must-see in film history. So it's one of those ones where it's like, I feel like it's not too bad if you get it spoiled because you might not see it, but it could get you to appreciate maybe more movies of that time. And it definitely got me interested. Maybe I'll watch some more Stanley Donen movies, or maybe another Audrey Hepburn movie, just because, I really did like her in the movie. I liked the vibe of this Stanley Donen film. A lot of people I saw on Letterboxd reading all the comments where people were relating it to, I thought the poster was like a Hitchcock movie, or like a Hitchcock movie, but like with more comedy, more silly, with Audrey Hepburn and everything. Where it's like, I don't think it was like 100% like crazy clever like a lot of Hitchcock movies are, but it could, gets me in the vibe of maybe watching a few Hitchcock movies I haven't seen, because I haven't seen like too many Hitchcock movies myself. So I think my final points are like Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant carry this movie. with their banter. So many great just one-liners towards each other and roasting each other. There was one like near the beginning of the movie where I actually just laughed out loud, and I was watching it by myself. I didn't start it watching with my brother or anything. It's like, yeah, it really is a fun, witty movie from the 60s. And yeah, it's a good look back onto what the vibe of the 60s cinema landscape. So some movies I could talk about for a very long time. I've done some movies like more sci-fi movies, thinking of like just like the concepts behind the sci-fi and the basis that it has. I really love talking about that for a long time. But some movies like this is just like, I'm taking for what it is. It doesn't really need to be thought about too deeply. It's very charming. There's a lot of banter. The characters are great, and the plot is fun enough and twisty enough. And yeah, I think it's very important to say the vibes of a movie and explain that more than it is the plot. And yeah, I think it was a very, very fun ride. So yeah, definitely would recommend. All right, Amelie's next week. I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably watch it shortly, probably within the next couple days.